So, ladies and gentlemen, imagine you were in the United States Air Force and stationed in a top secret underground nuclear missile silo. Imagine that suddenly a fleet of UFOs appeared over the silo, and the UFOs began remotely taking over the control of the missiles. It sounds like science fiction, but this is actually what happened in 1967 to Air Force Captain Robert Salas, who will now tell his amazing story. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Captain Robert Salas.
Thank you, Ruben. Thanks for coming. The title is UFO Phenomenon Reality, because this is very real. This is not Star Wars or The Empire Strikes Back. It really happened. So without further ado, I'll proceed here. I'll start in 1994. I was a student at the University of Washington, Seattle. I was going through a bookstore and happened to pick up this book, Above Top Secret by Timothy Good. And happened to turn to page 301 of this book. And on that page was a short paragraph that said something about UFOs shutting down missiles in Montana in 1967. Well, I was flabbergasted because I had spent the previous 27 years trying to forget it. And the only reason I was trying to forget it was because I was ordered to and signed a document that said I would never talk about this. And so I got kind of excited. I thought the Air Force had gone ahead and declassified the incident. And but I wasn't sure because this is such a short little paragraph. I decided to take a chance and talk to an investigator from MUFON in Seattle, a man by the name of James Klotz. And I asked him to send a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act request, to the Air Force asking for information about this incident that happened in 1967, but asked him not to say anything about UFOs, just circumstances about this particular incident. Well, he did, and lo and behold, we did get documents back from the Air Force saying, with a letter saying, you know, this was classified, but since it's been so long, we're going to go ahead and declassify the incident, and we will send you some documents. Now, I want to speak just a little bit about my motivation to speak and why I followed through with this, because I was still taking a chance because, again, I had signed a non-disclosure statement. But I still remember those guards out there looking at this glowing red object hovering above the facility. And I'll show you what the facility looks like in a minute. Frightened, very frightened, with their guns drawn. And I was unable to speak with them. They called me the next day, actually, at home, after we were off duty, and they begged me, literally begged me to come and talk to them about this, but of course I couldn't do it. And also because I have a responsibility, since this happened to me, I have a responsibility to inform the public, and that's what I've been doing for the last 20-some years. A little bit of difficulty recovering some of the memories and the facts of the incident, because again, I was trying to consciously and subconsciously trying to forget it, because I could not talk about it. So it was hard to recover things like who my commander was in the capsule, things like that, and where I was located. the information we got back was about, well, what I'll explain to you is echo flight. And as it turns out, I wasn't at echo flight. I was at another flight, and it was kind of a shock when I found that out, because by then I had already gone on the radio and spoken on the Art Bell show, and actually did a TV show from the program Sightings. When I found out that I was not at Echo Flight, I was at Oscar Flight. So we'll get into this. Great Falls, Montana is up right near Canada, and right in the middle of the state is Great Falls. That's what Malmstrom Air Force Base is, at Great Falls. And where I was at Oscar Flight, and I'll try to point it out here if I can. I think I'm supposed to have this thing on. I don't know if you can see this little red dot here, but here's 01, that big black dot right there. That's Roy, Montana. It's about 100 miles east of Great Falls. And here's Echo Flight. You notice the O's around 01 are the 10 missile sites, call them launch facilities. That's where the missiles are actually located. So here's a current photograph of Oscar 1. Notice the gate and the guard shack with these windows facing the front gate. This is the launch facility where the missiles are actually located. You can see here we had a cover for the missile silo. This is a very heavy cover, weighed about 20 tons. And I'll talk about that a little bit more a little later. But this is the launch control center, launch control facility is the entire facility. We would go in, check in, draw weapons, and go down on an elevator, go through some security procedures, and this is where we were for 24 hours, locked in this capsule, underground capsule. This is about 60 feet underground. And like I say, we were locked in. We couldn't leave, obviously. We had control of 10 nuclear missiles, and so we had to stay downstairs. I get used to this. Okay, on the evening of March 24th, 1967, I was on duty. My commander's Fred Mywald there on the left. He was taking a rest break. We took turns because someone had to be alert 24 hours. I get a call from the topside guard. He's saying, "Sir, we're looking at strange lights in the sky. They're flying circles around the facility. They're going at high speed, stopping on a dime, reversing course, and making very unusual maneuvers. They're not making any noise, no engine noise. They're not aircraft. They're lights." And I just said, okay. I didn't know what to think. I even said, "You mean like UFOs?" And he said, "I don't know what to think, sir." And so I said, okay, I've got to go back to my book here. So talk to me if anything more interesting happens. So I hang up the phone. A couple minutes later, he calls back. This time he's screaming into the phone. He's obviously scared, and his voice is shaking, and he says, "Sir, we've got this glowing red object. It's huge. It's hovering right above the front gate, and we've got all the guards out here with their weapons drawn. Tell me, what do we do?" And I was shocked, of course. But from the sound of his voice, he was serious, and I thought, you know, it could be some kind of a terrorist attack. Somebody's trying to get in. I just tell them, you know, make sure nothing comes in the front gate. And he said, okay, and hangs up the phone. Actually, he said something else. He said one of the guards got injured, so he had to hang up the phone. It turned out the guard was so frightened from seeing this thing that he had tried to jump the fence, and we had barbed wire along the top, and he cut his hand. At any rate, after that phone call, I went over and talked to my commander, Fred Mywald, woke him up, and I was about to tell him about the phone calls, and all of a sudden, our missiles started shutting down. Now, let me explain that a little bit. We had this control panel here, and these top lights were normally green, and we had a couple of lights down here that were security lights showing whether or not the launch facility where the missiles were located were secure. So when we started getting alarms and lights going on at the same time, and within seconds, all 10 of these top lights turned from green to red. All the missiles were disabled. We also had a couple of sites where we had incursion lights, these red ones down here at the bottom. And so I had to call back upstairs and get guards out there to check those facilities out. My commander called into the command post. They told him, he reported this, of course, and they told him the same thing had happened at another site. He turned around and told me that. And I thought the same thing happened that night, but it turns out the same thing had happened about a week earlier, and that was the Echo Flight incident. We did send guards out to these two launch facilities, and when they got out there again, they saw UFOs hovering over the facilities. Next thing of note is we were relieved of duty that next morning. We had a new crew come out, and they had a helicopter wanting us to go back to the base immediately. I did get a chance to talk to the topside guard briefly, very briefly, and again he repeated that it was a huge orange, reddish, glowing object, oval shape, hovering right above the front gate, and that's about all he could say. I could tell, though, that he was told not to talk to even us about this because he was very reluctant to talk to me. We had to go back to the base, and we were ordered into our squadron commander's office. There was a guy from AFOSI, Office of Special Investigation. He shoved a piece of paper in our face and said, "Sign here. You're never ever to talk about this on penalty of incarceration and fines, etc., etc." And so basically we had to sign that. And from that point on, I couldn't talk to anybody about it, either within the Air Force or outside the Air Force. Nobody, not even our spouses, were able to discuss. I will point out that I was there another 2 years, and not one instance did we hear anything more about this incident, even though there was a lot going on in the background. And we were briefed, every time we went on an alert, we were briefed on the activities in the field. Echo Flight, March 16th, 1967, very similar incident, and I'm going to let Colonel Fiegel explain to you what happened. Can you play that first audio, please? First audio?
UFO hovering over the site. I said, "Yeah, right, what are you guys drinking out there?" And we struck
Sorry about that sound. Did you all get that? No. Basically, the same thing happened at his site, only this time there were guards and maintenance people out at 2 of the sites, and they had UFOs, reported UFOs right above them. All 10 of their missiles went down within seconds. Within about 10 seconds, all 10 of their missiles went down. I'll get into a little bit more about what we know about this. One of the first documents we received was this telex from SAC headquarters, Strategic Air Command headquarters, to the field, and they named people specifically that they want involved in this. And I'll just read you a little bit of it. They do verify that 10 missiles lost strategic alert within 10 seconds of each other. And they state the fact that no apparent reason for the loss of 10 missiles can be readily identified as cause for grave concern to this headquarters. I want you to remember that, grave concern, because they had not a clue what had caused this, even at SAC headquarters. Another document we received was this missile wing history report. It was written by a man by the name of, oh gosh, what was his name? Anyway, I'll get to that. Gamble, David Gamble. And this is the only reference to UFO regarding the Echo incident. It does say rumors of UFO around the area of Echo during the time of the fault were disproven. How do you disprove a rumor? Okay, this gets to the meat of the matter. The Air Force conducted 2 investigations. One investigation was conducted by Boeing, and the Air Force conducted their own classified or secret investigation on their own. This was a secret document, part of a secret document. The Air Force stated, in the opinion of the team, was that externally generated signals caused the generation of these 2 channels. We had 2 channels. We had a way of querying the system to see what was wrong. And one of the channels read out guidance and control system failure. I forget, coupler failure was the other one. So these 2 channels, and it says here, the possibility of this is very remote due to the fact that all 10 couplers would have to fail in the flight within a few seconds of each other. Let me just elaborate on that. These missiles had individual systems. They were inertially guided missiles. So they had their own separate onboard computer, logic coupler, we call it a logic coupler, and this object would have had to send a signal down through 60 feet of earth and concrete and penetrate the triply shielded cable we had, shielded against EMI, and send that signal to 10 separate missiles, 10 separate pieces of equipment. And the missiles were located miles away from each other, miles away from each other. And so they would have to send these signals to a specific piece of hardware on each missile. We had absolutely no idea how they were able to do that. And we certainly didn't have the ability to do that then or now. Let me go back. And in 2010, I helped organize the conference in Washington, D.C., National Press Club. And these 2 gentlemen were there. Captain Robert Jameson, who was the maintenance officer that brought all of Oscar flight. That's the flight I was at. Back up on alert. He confirmed that all 10 of our missiles shut down, and he was the maintenance chief to bring them back up. Arnie Arneson, cryptographic officer of Nelson Air Force Base, he saw telexes stating, these were classified, excuse me, but they were stating UFOs were involved in the shutdown at Maelstrom in 1967. The reason Jameson can confirm the date that I gave you, March 24th, is because of this gentleman, truck driver, Ken Williams. He was driving his big rig into Great Falls, and as you approach Great Falls, there's a little town called Belt, Montana. He's driving along, he looks to his left and he sees this bright white light, and it's kind of trailing, not trailing, but going the same speed he is. You can see it off to the left. And a little shocked, flabbergasted. It was a bright light, it was flying. He stopped his truck and the UFO stopped. He looked over there again, and then it went down into a gully. There's a picture of it right here, Freshman's Gully. Oh. Wow, this thing is sensitive. Right here. He gets on his radio and calls the highway patrol. Highway patrolman comes out. Bud Nader, I think his name was, and he also sees the UFO. Highway patrol calls the Air Force. The Air Force comes out. They investigate this. They see it. It's written up in a report. I've got a copy of that report. That report was sent to Air Force and also to a man named Ed Condon. We'll get to him. But when Jameson went on duty that night, he was told about this, and that's how he remembers the exact date of the Oscar flight shutdown. Major Chase was a RB-47 pilot who had his incident. He was, at the time of my shutdowns, he was the, actually, one of his titles was base UFO officer, and I'll get to that, why they were called that. But he was also the base ops officer, base operations. In 1957, he had his own UFO incident. He was flying an RB-47 out in the Gulf with the crew of, I'm sorry, I don't know how to operate this thing. With a crew of 3, and all of a sudden they saw a UFO that was basically chasing them. They fly up through Mississippi and over to Fort Worth, and then on to Kansas. And for about 2 hours, this UFO was sighted. See these ABCs here? And that's where they got radar sightings, both ground and airborne radar, and visuals on this big lighted UFO object that chased him all over the Southwest there. When he landed in Kansas, the AFOSI took all the data, including the radar data, and the reason I mention that is because it becomes important here when he gets involved with Condon. The Air Force decided in 1966, August of 66, to do a so-called scientific investigation of the UFO question. This was the result of the Kecksburg incident, I think, in Pennsylvania, 1966. There was such a public outcry, including from then Congressman Gerald Ford, to conduct this investigation, that they went ahead and organized it. This was the order that was issued by the Air Force when they agreed with the University of Colorado to conduct this study. They were to conduct independently without restrictions, and they were to have access to all UFO reports to conduct the study. The chief investigator was Dr. Roy Craig. He was actually a associate professor of chemistry, I think, at the University of Colorado. He had no investigative experience. Never been any kind of investigator, really. He was a professor of chemistry. Now, I'll point out that Raymond Fowler, some of you may have heard of him. He has written a book, The Andreessen Affair, about an incident involving an abduction incident. But Ray Fowler in 1967 was employed by Sylvania Corporation. They had the electrical contract, support contract for the Minuteman system. When the incidents occurred that I just described, the shutdowns, he got a report from the field from people he had there. And they assured him, because they had seen the object themselves, that this was a UFO incident. Well, Ray Fowler was also a part of, I think it was NICAP. NICAP was one of the first organizations, something like MUFON is today, right? And he decided to contact the Condon investigator and tell him about what he knew. Well, Craig actually went down to visit Fowler and got quite a bit of information, names of individuals that he could interview. He knew the names of the crew, et cetera, et cetera. Remember now, he was the chief investigator for Condon, the Air Force Scientific Investigation. So he goes out to Nelson Air Force Base. He talks to Colonel Chase, base ops, UFO officer, and asks if he could talk to some of his people that are investigating, because he knew the Air Force was conducting their own investigation. Well, Chase was shocked that he knew about this, because this was highly, highly classified, what had happened relative to UFOs, and also the Air Force investigation was classified. So he told Craig that he could not talk to any of the investigators, and that if he wanted to see the final report, he'd have to go to Washington, because they had their contact in Washington. Now, I remember when the order came out for the Air Force, the Air Force order said that Condon should have access to everything. Well, he wasn't given access to these incident reports or any of the investigators. Robert Lowe supposedly tried to get access. By the way, they only had one man on the Condon team that was able to look at classified information. That was Robert Lowe. Robert Lowe, prior to the Condon investigation starting, discounted the whole UFO theory. He was absolutely against it. So needless to say, they did not get access to this Air Force report. And so Craig basically walked away from it. He didn't call anybody, he didn't talk to anybody, and he was at Malmstrom. We have records of that. Robert Kaminsky was one of the first people that contacted me. He was the Boeing investigator, chief investigator for the civilian component of the investigation. He had a large team of engineers. He ran the team. They did a full investigation, came back, the team got together, and they could not find any viable cause for the Echo flight shutdown, or the Oscar flight shutdown. So they go to write the report, and remember, the Air Force had grave concern about this. They couldn't explain it. The Boeing team of experts, I mean, these guys knew the system backwards and forwards. They were engineers, they designed the system, etc. Said they could not find a viable cause. They go to write the report, and the supervisor comes to him and says, "Stop writing your report. The Air Force does not want you to write a report." And by the way, this was a UFO event. This was confirmed by their supervisor. Now, the reason the Air Force didn't want Boeing to write a final report was because of the Condon Committee. It was still investigating. If they had written that report, the Condon Committee might have gotten access to it, and there would have been a whole different set of conclusions from that. This is just summarizes what I just told you about Kaminsky's statement. And he was the project team leader for the Boeing investigation team. So the cover-up really starts with Edward Condon. Let's see if I've got something on Condon here. Oops. A little bit about Edward Condon. In 1946, he was appointed by President Truman as the head of Bureau of Standards, which at that time had cognizance or control over the nuclear energy program in the United States, 1946, okay. In 1949, I think it is, J. Edgar Hoover, head of the FBI, writes a letter to the president stating that there are communist infiltrators in the U.S. government, and one of them is Edward Condon. Basically accusing him of being a spy, a Russian spy. There is an investigation, and finally Condon loses his clearance. And he is out of a job, basically, and can no longer work on government contracts. That was about 1951. 1966, the Air Force comes to Condon and says, "How would you like to investigate UFOs for us? If you do that little task for us, we'll reinstate your security clearance." Which is very lucrative, right? At any rate, that's kind of where Condon fits in. He was against UFOs from the beginning, wasn't interested really in this study. And so this is how the cover-up of the Maelstrom incidents occurred. And it resulted in this fact sheet by the Air Force. So the Condon investigation report comes out in late '68, early '69, and the Air Force immediately issues a statement to discontinue any UFO investigations based on the findings of the Condon Committee, the University of Colorado study, where they did not even consider my incidents or other incidents that I'll talk about also. And it says here, no UFO reported, investigated, and evaluated by the Air Force has ever been an indication of threat to our national security. Well, here we've got 20 missiles, nuclear missiles, shut down for no apparent reason. There was never any definitive conclusion as to what caused the shutdowns. I do know that up until 1972, from talking to people I know, that this was still being studied by the Air Force in a classified program. Yet the Air Force doesn't consider this a national security issue. I'll talk a little bit about the UFO cabal. And I'm going to use my, put my math teacher hat on. I still teach math in high school, but one of the ways you can prove a conjecture or a mathematical conjecture or a theorem is to use what's called deductive reasoning. Similar like what Sherlock Holmes uses, right? So deductive reasoning simply means you obtain facts one way or the other, you get agreement that these are facts, and then you draw conclusions from those facts, working towards a particular conjecture. My conjecture is that there indeed is the UFO cabal. It's an international organization, and which is staffed by mostly intel agents, but other people, which I'll get into a little bit. Now, how do I prove this? Well, in 1947, Roswell, you heard that at first they said the Air Force recovered a craft, and then they reneged on that and said, no, it wasn't a craft, it was a weather balloon. But then in 1979, I think it was, Stanton Friedman talked to Jesse Marcel, who was the intelligence officer at Roswell Air Force Base, who confirmed that that was no weather balloon, it was a real craft, and it was made from very strange material. There was debris spewed all over the place, and he actually brought pieces home and showed his son. And you've probably heard of Jesse Marcel Jr. He actually drew some of the inscription that he saw on some of the pieces of metal that he was able to hold on to. Fact. As far as I'm concerned, it's a fact. We've got up to 300 witnesses that will validate the truth of the Roswell story. I'll reference you a good book you can read on that, and that's Witness to Roswell by Don Schmidt and Tom Carey. 1948, well, it was called Project Sign, the precursor of Blue Book. The Air Force had been studying the UFO question since World War II. The engineers of Project Sign, the Air Force people, said there's no question in our minds because there's been so many witnesses come forward, so many credible pilots, military and civilian. We think this is real, it's extraterrestrial. They take this so-called estimate of the situation, present it to Hoyt Vandenberg, who was chief of staff of the Air Force at the time, and Vandenberg basically says, go away, bring me back an ET or a piece of equipment, and then we'll talk. But again, this was a very extensive internal Air Force study that showed that the UFO phenomenon was real and they were extraterrestrial. In 1950, Wilbert Smith was an engineer for the Canadian government. He was working on a project, a classified project with the U.S. government on so-called gravimetrics. And he writes back to his government at one point and says, you know, I've just been told that there is a secret group run by Vannevar Bush who is studying the UFO question. And it's very real. Vannevar Bush was the chief scientist during World War II for the U.S. government. He was super head of the atom bomb project and other engineering projects. He was the top scientist in the U.S. government at the time. 1953, the Robertson panel. This was a result of the flap in Washington, D.C., 1952. It happened during the summer of 1952. 2 months, UFOs were sighted over Washington, D.C. multiple times. Aircraft were scrambled, jets were scrambled against it. They were given shoot down orders. There is strong indication that some of our aircraft were actually shot down by UFOs, and we lost pilots, we lost aircraft. This got into the newspapers. There were a lot of civilian reports, people on the ground that saw these objects. The civil aeronautics chief aircraft controller in the Washington, D.C. area came out and said he couldn't explain how these objects could maneuver the way they did, how fast they were going, and yes, indeed, we had fighter pilots flying the best aircraft we had at the time. They couldn't even get near them. So this was a big flap. There was a hearing, and again, there was a public outcry for answers, and so in 1953, the CIA got some people together and decided, what are we going to do about this? And so this was run by the CIA. They concluded that they had to have a disinformation effort going to calm the public down. You know, talk about this as swamp gas, et cetera, Venus, what have you. Again, a fact. We've got the report on this Robinson Panel Committee, 1966 Con investigation, I just went over that. Ongoing evidence of international collusion to keep UFO secrets. Now, how do I come to that fact? A couple of ways. One way is I'll mention the Rendlesham Forest case, 1980. Again, lots of witnesses to the UFO event at a base in England called Bentwaters Base. They had nuclear weapons there. UFOs came over, shone a light on the weapons storage area where nuclear weapons were kept. Many witnesses, Air Force personnel. Colonel Halt, you may have heard of, has come out, and we've got his deposition in addition to his tape recording talking about this incident. But what's significant here with regard to the cabal is that these witnesses were interrogated by extreme measures. A lot of them were drugged during interrogations. And this was done not just by Air Force OSI, but also by people from UK intelligence. And NSA was involved also. I've also talked to other officers from other countries that tell me that they have indeed either been involved or know of involvement of their higher ups with Air Force people who collaborate with them, let's say, on UFO incidents in their countries. One is Brazil. I don't know if any of you have heard the Varginha case, but that was one case where there was some U.S. military involvement with the Brazilian military. Also happened in Peru. And this business about shutting up witnesses, I mentioned this disinformation effort that was CIA asked for. It happened at Ellsworth Air Force Base, 1976. I talk about this in my newest book. But again, he was drugged, and he was told to say certain things. So there is a concerted effort here to shut witnesses up by many different means, all means available. Okay, so we have activities to silence witnesses by intimidation. By the way, many of the Roswell witnesses were threatened, their lives were threatened. Organized effort to discredit reports and disinform the public. Organized psyops to discredit witnesses, and this all points to a secret group, some kind of an organization that's trying to keep this quiet. How could this be? You'd have to have military resources, you'd have to have intelligence agencies, control airspace, control over ocean space, control over civilian contractors. I think initially this group was concerned about the impact, the social impact of revealing this information to the public. But I think it's evolved to a point where this is strictly about power and wealth. When you think about the kind of secrets that they are keeping from the public. A zero-sum game? Yeah, it's a zero-sum game. A zero-sum game is a game where there's only so many points available to win by two sides, right? And so if one side loses a point, the other side gains a point. You could look at it that way. Right now, the public doesn't have too many of these points. They're mostly on the side of the cabal. So what would it look like? This is just a guesstimate, I guess, on my part. They would, let me go back, sorry. Okay, they would, sorry about that. I'll just read it. They'd have to have some kind of liaison with industry in order to put the application of the UFO secrets out in industry and benefit from that. They'd have to have data collection analysis, security operations, intelligence operations, weapons development. I do believe that there are weapons being developed to, let's say, disable these objects or other things. Paranormal effects, foreign ops liaison, monitoring and predictive analysis, and financial operations. By the way, where would they get the money from this? Black ops. Black ops would provide a lot of money for this. I don't think I've got time for that story, but artifact retrieval operations, and so on. Let me just talk a little bit about the testimony of others. Some of these I've got, well, just about all of them I've got in my new book. Mouse from 1966. Again, these gentlemen have given affidavits, their word, that what they disclosed in, this is from, again, the 2010 conference in Washington, D.C. This man, McDonough, was doing a survey at Maelstrom when a UFO comes over, shines a beam of light down on him, he frightened the heck out of him. Bruce Fenstermacher, again, UFO over his missile site, 1976, Francis E. Warren Air Force Base. Francis E. Warren is down in Wyoming. Colonel Halt, I think I talked about that. Jerome Nelson, he was an Atlas launch officer at Walker Air Force Base, formerly Roswell Air Force Base, and again, on several occasions over a span of a couple of years, they had UFOs overhead, and again, shining a beam of light. And this is kind of a recurring theme. UFO comes over the missile area, shines a beam of light, or the weapons storage area, shines a beam of light, flies off. And I think there's a reason for that I'll go into. This is a very interesting case. Minot Air Force Base, 1968. Major Bradford Runyon is co-piloting a B-52 landing into Minot Air Force Base after a training flight. He's contacted by radio by the commanding general, told fly back over this particular area and look down and see if you see something, and sure enough, this is what he saw. This object here is oval shaped. It had kind of a protrusion back here with a crescent in the back. It was glowing blue. And it was right next to a missile launch site, a launch facility. Well, he lands the airplane, and I'll let you tell him the rest. I'll tell you the rest. Can you play the next audio, please? Okay. Again, I'll point
Turns
out.
out that the reason that the alarms were set off was the 20-ton concrete lid covering the top of the missile silo had been removed, and the chain link fence around the thing had been squashed. There was radioactivity around, and the inner alarm down the side of the silo had also been activated. Well, it turns out that there were two ways to remove the concrete lid. You either have a large crane that lift 20 tons and set it off to the side, or have explosive charges that blow it off in case one launches the missile and can go to war. The explosive charges haven't been activated.
Okay, 8 minutes. One of the reasons I bring this up, I talked in, where was it, Germany, Stuttgart, with, oh gosh, what's his name? Chariot of the Gods, who wrote that. Yeah. And there's been a lot of questions about, you know, how do they move these big stones? And so this may be one of the answers. They were able to lift 20 tons. Amazing. Citizens hearing of disclosure in 2013, we had 3 more witnesses come forward. I don't have time to go over their testimony. You can find it on YouTube, but this is a victory for us because I was able to talk these guys into coming forward for the first time. Many other stories, including one in Iraq, which I'll briefly touch on. But you can see here, these are listed in my book, 1945, Hanford nuclear site where plutonium was first developed. UFOs were seen over the Hanford facility. Pursuit aircraft, World War II, was still going on. This is before the first atomic bomb blast. And they chased the UFOs away, but they were over the facility that was producing the plutonium. You see all these other incidents involving UFOs and nuclear weapons, including in 2010, Francis E. Warren Air Force Base in Wyoming. 50 nuclear missiles shut down for no reason. We have witnesses that a UFO was seen over this facilities around the time of the shutdown. Hopefully these witnesses will come forward sometime in the future. Right now, they're still active duty or what have you, but we hope that'll happen in the future. Okay. Right now, estimated U.S. arsenal is about 10,000 nuclear weapons. They range the destructive power from 300 kilotons to about 1.5 megatons of TNT. The weapon I had on my missile in 1967 was about 800 kilotons. Now, the weapon that was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki were on the order of 15 to 20 kilotons. And they wiped out over 100,000 people on the initial blasts. 100,000 people. Can you imagine what a 1.5 megaton or a million tons could do to a city? Approximately 20,000 nukes worldwide, enough weapons-grade material to build 120,000 nuclear bombs if it was to be released or stolen. How to build a nuclear bomb is out there. The recipe is out there. A country that's dedicated itself to building a nuclear weapon could do it. Right now, of course, we just signed an agreement with Iran, and we're making inroads on controlling nuclear fissile material. Thank God we've got Iran to go along with this, and I'm hopeful that it will be a successful program to keep a nuclear weapon from them, and that we can apply that to North Korea, let's say, in the future. Chernobyl, you all know about this disaster. 1986, toxic cloud spread as far as the United Kingdom. There was a large increase of cancer and other health issues. There was a report in Pravda, the Russian newspaper, of people seeing a UFO in the area at the time of this incident. The Fukushima disaster, still a disaster. We don't know how much damage is done. We do know recently that it's reported that from the last monsoon or hurricane, what do they call it, typhoon, a lot of the nuclear material was released into the ocean, and we still don't know how much damage there. RTGs are radiothermal generators, radioisotope thermal generators. They produce heat. Basically, it's radioactive material producing heat and then converting it to electricity. It's being used on our satellites. It's being used on things like the rover on the Mars. And we're building bigger and bigger of those, putting them on the moon, etc. There have been many accidents with these items. I don't know how much time I've got left to get into this, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the abduction experience, ET abduction experience. You're going to hear more from Travis Walton next, but I wanted to bring this up because millions of people, probably millions, it's been estimated, have been taken. They generally don't recall the details. I talked to them, quite a few of them that talk about being taken to schools, etc. Adults are trained in paranormal activities, and I had my own experience. And the reason, just give me another minute. The reason I'm talking about it now, I didn't want to talk about it for a long, long time because I wanted to make sure my other story came out and it was credible. But I did in 1985. I was living in Manhattan Beach, California, with my wife, 2 kids, small kids at the time. One night I wake up and there's a bluish glow coming from the living room, blue light. I wake my wife up, she sees the blue light. I say, I'm going to get up and investigate. All of a sudden I'm paralyzed, can't move. Absolutely can't move. I struggled. I remember doing this, fighting as hard as I could, and I was paralyzed. I turned to my wife for help, and she's out. She's unconscious. The next thing I remember is this something in the doorway. I can't recall the exact details. Next thing I know, I'm being lifted off the bed and taken basically through the window of our bedroom. And next I'm on a table, a metal table, apparently on a craft. I have memories of seeing a big black eye in my face, and then he's holding a needle, about a big needle, 8 to 12 inches long. They want me to see it. I said they're going to insert it in my groin area. It's not going to hurt, but when they do that, it hurts like hell. And I say it's painful, and the pain goes away. They're taking me back to my bedroom. I don't remember anything about this the next day. This was 1985. And then 2007, I started getting memories back. I've had 4 sessions, and I am convinced, primarily because my wife confirmed that she also saw the blue light, and also other reasons I'm convinced this happened. Message from the cosmos, we're not alone. You are not alone. We also live here. Eliminate your nuclear weapons and control nuclear energy. Raise your level of consciousness and save your planet. Disclosure. Well, ET is already disclosed. Through all the sightings, witnesses coming forward, they're here. They've already disclosed that they're here. The question is, will the government acknowledge that? And there are a lot of reasons why they don't want to. We can't go into that right now. But again, it's a zero-sum game. I've got 2 books, and out there, and thank you for your attention. Appreciate it.
Wow, a lot there. Thank you for a great presentation. Amazing. Well, we're going to go ahead and take our break again and have you back here, folks, at approximately 4:45. We're going to show during the break a little bit of the film that The Making of Fire in the Sky. That was about Travis Walton's experience. So that'll be playing during the break, and then we'll have Mr. Walton come up here and then present the last presentation before we finish this program. So go ahead, folks, go in the lobby, relax, but see you back here very shortly. Thank you.